What if the most terrifying stories ever told are not found in fiction but in reality? Welcome back, and today we are diving deep into the darkest corners of true crime history. These are not made-up tales designed to entertain. These are real cases, real victims, and real mysteries that have haunted investigators for decades, sometimes even centuries. Cases so baffling, so deeply disturbing, that even the world's greatest minds could not crack them. Cases that gripped entire nations, changed laws, and left scars on society that never fully healed. From shadowy figures who vanished without a trace to killers who taunted police and were never caught. What lies ahead will challenge everything you think you know about justice and the unknown. So turn up the volume, settle in, and prepare yourself. Because the 10 mysteries we are about to explore are as chilling as they are unforgettable. Let's begin. So what is it about true crime that keeps us completely hooked? The answer lies deep within human psychology. Our minds are naturally drawn to mystery, justice, and the darker corners of human behaviour. Understanding how and why crimes happen gives us a sense of control over a world that can feel unpredictable and frightening. There is something deeply wired in us that needs resolution, closure, and answers, especially when justice seems just out of reach. True crime forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about society, human nature, and the fragile line between safety and danger. It raises questions we cannot easily ignore. The cases on this list were carefully chosen to represent the full spectrum of that fascination. From decades-old cold cases and brutal unsolved murders to chilling disappearances and conspiracies that rattled entire nations, each story carries weight, mystery, and an unsettling reminder that some questions may never be answered. Kicking off our list at number 10 is one of America's most baffling vanishing acts. Jimmy Hoffa was no ordinary man. As the powerful president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, he commanded enormous influence over the American labor movement, representing millions of workers across the country. But Hoffa had a darker side, with deep, well-documented ties to organised crime figures that would ultimately define his legacy. On July 30th, 1975, Hoffa was last seen leaving the Match's Red Fox restaurant parking lot in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. He had arranged a meeting that afternoon, but whoever he was meeting never officially came forward. He simply vanished without a trace. What followed was one of the most extensive missing persons investigations in American history. Decades of searching, countless tips, and multiple excavations have turned up absolutely nothing. To this day, Jimmy Hoffa's body has never been found, and his fate remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. The list of suspects in Hoffa's disappearance reads like a who's who of organised crime. Names like Anthony Provenzano, a New Jersey mob boss, and Anthony Giacalone, a Detroit mobster, were among those Hoffa was reportedly scheduled to meet that fateful day. Both denied any involvement, and neither was ever charged. Over the decades, theories about Hoffa's fate have ranged from the dramatic to the disturbing. Some believed he was buried beneath Giants Stadium in New Jersey, a claim that prompted actual excavations. Others suggested his body was dissolved in acid or fed into an industrial compactor, leaving no trace behind. The FBI has chased countless leads, conducted multiple searches, and interviewed dozens of witnesses over nearly 5 decades. Yet despite all of that effort, not a single theory has been conclusively proven, and Jimmy Hoffa's fate remains one of America's most enduring unsolved mysteries. Now at number 9, we enter one of the most haunting murder cases in American history. On January 15, 1947, residents of a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood stumbled upon a sight that would shock the entire nation. The body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, later dubbed the Black Dahlia by the press, was discovered in a vacant lot, completely drained of blood and severed at the waist. What made this case particularly disturbing was the precision of the wounds. The cuts were so clean and deliberate that investigators immediately suspected the killer possessed advanced medical or surgical knowledge. Elizabeth had been a young woman with dreams of becoming an actress, drawn to Hollywood like so many others seeking fame and fortune. Instead, her tragic end became a dark chapter, etched permanently into Los Angeles history, leaving investigators and the public utterly horrified and desperate for answers that seemed impossible to find. Investigators questioned over 150 suspects in the Black Dahlia case, yet no one was ever formally charged. The sheer number of leads overwhelmed detectives, and the case quickly became one of Los Angeles's most frustrating investigative failures. Over the decades, prominent theories have pointed to various individuals, including a surgeon named George Hodel, whose own son later wrote a book accusing him of the murder. Others have suspected a former boyfriend or even a Hollywood insider with medical connections. Some theorists believe the killer sent taunting letters to newspapers, much like later notorious killers would do. Despite modern forensic advancements and renewed interest from cold case investigators, no definitive conclusion has ever been reached. The Black Dahlia murder inspired countless books, major Hollywood films, and endless online speculation. Yet officially, the case remains completely unsolved, a haunting reminder that justice does not always prevail. Coming in at number 8 is one of the most chilling and infamous cases in American criminal history, the Zodiac Killer. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, a mysterious serial killer terrorized Northern California, leaving a trail of fear and confusion that has never been resolved. The Zodiac is confirmed to have killed at least 5 people, though he himself claimed responsibility for as many as 37 murders. What made this case uniquely terrifying was not just the killings, but the killer's deliberate taunting of law enforcement and the public. He sent cryptic letters and complex ciphers to local newspapers, mocking investigators and threatening more violence. These messages created widespread panic across the entire region. Despite one of the largest manhunts in California history and enormous public fascination, the Zodiac Killer was never identified, never arrested, and to this day remains one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The Zodiac Killer sent 4 encrypted ciphers to newspapers, taunting investigators and daring them to crack his code. For decades, these messages remained largely unsolved, fueling endless speculation and obsession among amateur codebreakers worldwide. Then in 2020, a team of independent researchers finally decoded the 340-character cipher, revealing a chilling message where the killer boasted about collecting slaves for the afterlife. However, 3 remaining ciphers still resist decryption to this day, keeping the mystery painfully alive. Over the years, numerous suspects have emerged, including Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted sex offender who remained investigators' primary person of interest for decades, though DNA evidence never conclusively tied him to the crimes. The case has inspired documentaries, films, and countless online communities dedicated to solving it. Decades later, new theorists continue emerging, armed with modern technology and fresh determination. Yet the Zodiac's true identity remains one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. Moving on from the shadowy world of ciphers and coded messages, our number 7 takes us to another deeply unsettling mystery that gripped the internet and left investigators scratching their heads. In February 2013, the body of 21-year-old Canadian student Elisa Lam was discovered inside a water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. What made this case particularly haunting was the elevator surveillance footage released by police, which quickly went viral across the world. In the video, Lam is seen pressing multiple floor buttons, hiding in the corner, and appearing to interact with someone or something invisible in the hallway. Her movements were erratic, almost trance-like, deeply unsettling to anyone who watched. The elevator doors behaved strangely too, refusing to close while she stood inside. This footage raised immediate and troubling questions. Who or what was she reacting to? Authorities ruled Elisa Lam's death an accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder cited as a contributing factor. However, the ruling sparked immediate controversy. Many questioned how a young woman could have climbed into a heavy industrial water tank on her own, sealed the lid from the inside, and gone undetected for nearly 3 weeks. The Cecil Hotel's dark history only deepened public suspicion. Theories ranged widely. Some believed a mental health episode led her to act irrationally in her final moments. Others suspected foul play, pointing to gaps in the hotel's security and unanswered questions about rooftop access. The case exploded back into public consciousness in 2021 when Netflix released the documentary series Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. Yet, despite renewed scrutiny and millions of viewers dissecting every detail, the full truth behind Elisa Lam's final hours remains disturbingly unclear. Moving to number 6 on our list, we have the terrifying case of the Golden State Killer. Operating across California from the early 1970s through the late 1980s, This predator committed at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and over 100 burglaries. Investigators knew they were hunting the same man for decades, yet his identity remained completely unknown. Law enforcement agencies across California pooled resources, but every lead went cold. The case haunted detectives for over 40 years. Then came 2018 and everything changed. Using a revolutionary technique called genealogical DNA testing, investigators uploaded crime scene DNA to a public ancestry database and traced distant relatives back to one shocking suspect. Joseph James D'Angelo, a former police officer living quietly in suburban Sacramento, was arrested outside his home. The man sworn to protect communities had been terrorizing them all along. It was one of the most stunning breakthroughs in modern criminal investigation history. Now at number 5, we have one of Australia's most heartbreaking and haunting mysteries. On Australia Day, January 26, 1966, 3 young siblings, Jane aged 9, Anna aged 7, and Grant aged 4, left their home in Adelaide to spend the day at Glenelg Beach. They never returned. Despite a massive search effort, the Beaumont children were never seen again, leaving their parents and an entire nation devastated. What makes this case so deeply unsettling is the world it shattered. Australia in 1966 was considered an incredibly safe country, a place where children roamed freely without fear. The disappearance of these 3 innocent kids fundamentally changed that perception overnight. Parents across the nation suddenly viewed public spaces differently, and the collective innocence of Australian society was permanently lost. This single case transformed how an entire generation approached child safety forever. Witnesses at Glenelg Beach that day described seeing the 3 children with an unknown tall, lean man with blonde hair. He appeared to buy them lunch, something their small amount of pocket money could not have covered. This mysterious stranger became the central focus of investigators for decades, yet was never conclusively identified. Over the years, several suspects emerged. Convicted child killer Arthur Stanley Brown was long considered a prime person of interest. Another suspect, a Dutch psychic named Gerard Croiset, even travelled to Australia claiming he could locate the children, though his efforts proved fruitless. Numerous excavations have been conducted across Adelaide, including a 2018 dig at a former factory site, all returning nothing. Despite hundreds of leads, multiple confessions, and relentless public interest, no arrests have ever been made. The Beaumont Children case remains officially unsolved, a wound in Australia's national memory that simply refuses to heal. And that brings us to number 4, a case that shook America to its core and dominated headlines for years. On Christmas Day 1996 in Boulder, Colorado, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey was reported missing by her mother, Patsy Ramsey, after she discovered a lengthy ransom note demanding $118,000. Police were called, family and friends gathered, and hours passed in agonizing uncertainty. Then, that afternoon, JonBenét's father, John Ramsey, discovered her body in the basement of their family home. She had been strangled and struck on the head. The little girl, famous for competing in child beauty pageants, was gone. Within days, the story exploded across every television screen and newspaper in the country. America was horrified, heartbroken, and desperate for answers. Who could murder an innocent 6-year-old child on Christmas night inside her own home? From the very beginning, investigators zeroed in on John and Patsy Ramsey. The unusual ransom note written on paper found inside the home and the parents' behaviour raised immediate red flags. For years, public opinion and law enforcement suspicion pointed squarely at the family. However, advanced DNA testing eventually told a different story. In 2008, DNA found on JonBenét's clothing did not match anyone in the Ramsey family, officially clearing both parents. Tragically, Patsy Ramsey had already passed away from cancer 2 years prior. Then came the bizarre twist of 2006 when John Mark Carr falsely confessed to the murder, only for his DNA to rule him out entirely. Compounding the tragedy, the crime scene had been severely compromised in those critical early hours, with evidence contaminated and witnesses moved through the basement. Decades later, the case remains heartbreakingly unsolved. Now we arrive at number 3, and this one ventures into territory that feels almost impossible to explain. The Dyatlov Pass incident occurred in February 1959 deep in the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, and it remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in history. A group of 9 experienced hikers, all trained and seasoned mountaineers, set out on a winter expedition and never returned. When rescuers finally located their camp, what they found defied all rational explanation. The tent had been torn open from the inside, as if the group had desperately cut their way out in sheer panic. Bodies were discovered scattered across the snow, some partially clothed despite temperatures well below freezing. Several victims showed signs of severe internal trauma, crushed ribs and fractured skulls, yet there were absolutely no external wounds or signs of a struggle with another person. Something terrified these experienced hikers beyond comprehension. Theories attempting to explain the Dyatlov Pass incident are as varied as they are fascinating. Some researchers point to an avalanche, suggesting the hikers cut their tent open to escape a sudden snowslide. Others propose infrasound, a low-frequency sound produced by wind moving through mountains, which can trigger panic and disorientation in humans. More controversial theories involve Soviet military testing of experimental weapons in the area, while paranormal enthusiasts suggest encounters with unidentified flying objects or unknown creatures. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation, ultimately concluding that an avalanche was the most probable cause. However, many forensic experts, historians, and dedicated enthusiasts remain deeply skeptical, arguing the evidence simply does not fully support that conclusion. What makes Dyatlov Pass so enduringly captivating is that no single theory perfectly explains every disturbing detail, keeping this extraordinary case firmly among the most debated mysteries in true crime history. Coming in at number 2, we have one of the most audacious crimes in American history, the case of D.B. Cooper, the only unsolved act of air piracy in American aviation history. On November 24, 1971, a man using the alias D.B. Cooper boarded a Northwest Orient flight from Portland to Seattle. Dressed in a suit and carrying a briefcase, he appeared completely ordinary. But mid-flight, he handed a flight attendant a note claiming he had a bomb. His demands were simple but staggering: $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. Authorities complied. After landing in Seattle to release the passengers, the plane took off again, and somewhere over the dense wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, D.B. Cooper strapped on a parachute, grabbed the ransom money, and leaped into the dark night sky. He was never seen again. The FBI launched one of the most extensive investigations in its history, and yet, this ghost in a suit simply vanished. Despite one of the most extensive investigations in FBI history, D.B. Cooper was never found. The only physical evidence ever recovered came in 1980, when a young boy discovered a small bundle of deteriorating $20 bills along the Columbia River. The serial numbers matched the ransom money, but the discovery raised more questions than it answered. Over the decades, the FBI investigated dozens of suspects, from military veterans to seasoned skydivers, yet none could be conclusively linked to the hijacking. In 2016, after 45 years of active pursuit, the FBI officially suspended its investigation, redirecting resources toward other priorities. Yet D.B. Cooper never truly disappeared from American consciousness. He became something rare in true crime history, a folk hero. His audacity, his calm demeanor, his seemingly impossible escape captured the public imagination. He represents a certain rebellious fantasy, the ordinary man who outsmarted an entire system and simply vanished into the clouds. And finally, our number 1 spot belongs to the case that started it all, Jack the Ripper. In 1888, the Whitechapel district of London became the hunting ground for one of history's most terrifying killers. 5 canonical victims, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, were murdered with shocking brutality and surgical precision. Despite hundreds of suspects theorized over more than a century, from local physicians to members of the royal family, the Ripper's true identity remains unknown. These 10 cases remind us that behind every mystery are real human lives, real families, and real pain that never fully heals. That's what makes true crime so powerful and so important to remember. If you found this video compelling, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Which case haunts you the most?